Hi folks, here's another wee story about industry when we was a laddie. As you can see, this is the canal. Over there was Old Bainsford Foundry where I used to work. But way back, right more or less across from it over here, there used to be a gasworks. We used to cross the old bridge here. That was a long while back. And we used to walk over to the gasworks there. Now what happened in there, coal was delivered there. It went through I think it was a heating process where gas was extracted from the coal, and it was put into two big gasometers that used to be there. Some of the old timers will remember Etna Road. When you went down to the bottom of Etna Road, you used to see two big gasometers. Well, it was outside of the trees there. Well, we used to come down here, and as I say, it was me and my sister. We used to cross the bridge here, the wee log gates, and we had a bogey, so you can imagine. Quite old that, isn't it, if you look at it. Anyway, we used to go in there, and what was left of the coal after they extracted the gas out of it was what we called coke. In other words, stuff you use for barbecues and that now. It's coke, like cinders, that sort of, like smokeless fuel sort of thing. I think that's what they use nowadays. It was like that. We used to get a couple of bag or a couple of bag awfully light, and we took it home to our dads, and that's it, what we used in our fireplaces. In Bainsford, well, Cross Street, everybody did it. But it just goes to show that the canal here played a very important part to industry along here. You can see it's in a mess now. Oh God, you can't even see the water. But it used to be all clear, no weeds here. It was always kept clear, because they used to have lock gate keepers. Every so far along the canal there used to be a wee house where they used to stay, but more or less at every log gate there was a wee house, like a wee hut, painted white, and they kept all their tools in it for maintaining the log gates, the sluice gates. As you can see, the metal there, kept tins of grease and God knows what, maintenance kits. As I say, every so far along they had a wee house where the gatekeeper would stay. Now I think there's only one that I can remember still in existence, and that's further up there. It's between Bainsford and Camlin. You probably see it just before you hit the Beefeater or the distillery there on the left hand side. It sits down at the canal, a wee white building next to the railway line. That's the only one I can remember. But I'll take a couple of photos of that some other time and put them on here, if I can, that is. But one other thing that I've never heard anyone mention, I remember years ago I was coming along here, I think I was on my bantam at the time, and I saw a guy standing just a couple of 100 yards along there looking into the canal, and as I was coming along I said, I know that guy. So I pulled in just before the buildings there at Coburn's, and as I got closer I realised I knew him. If I mind right, he was Wally Thompson. He was a neighbour of mine, a couple of houses along from where I stay now. He was a bowler from the BA. Now I wondered what he was doing there, just standing looking in the water, so I parked my bike at the side of the road, and I came up and we had a wee blether. I said, "What are you doing up here?" He says, "So I'm checking the water level." I says, "The water level? What do you mean?" So he pointed down to my bike. He says, "See that where you parked your bike? There's a fenced off unit there." And to let you understand, you've seen these wee electricity substations at various places, and they've got a fence round them. They're padlocked and they're just left. They're quite safe as long as nobody goes into them. It was similar to that, but it wasn't a substation. It was a pump house. And I says, "Well, what does that do like?" He says, "Well, look at the canal there. You see all the ripples going across to the other side of the canal there?" Aye. He says, "Well, that's water coming out of the BA into the canal." And I says, "Oh, they're pumping water." He says, "Well, what happens is there's another pipe there and there's a kind of sluice gate thing. And we take water from the canal and it goes into the factory, used for cooling and all that sort of stuff within the factory. It's filtered, it's not for drinking obviously, it's for machinery, cooling down plants and all the rest of it." So I said, "That must be something like Cairn Works." Because they had the River Cairn, they had the Cairn Dam, which is still there. And remember what I used to talk about, the wee Cairn, that came out of the Cairn Works, and it was always warm, so obviously it was cooling something down, so this must be something similar. He says, "Well, it's all done with valves here, and that's what that pump house is. It's all regulated, so much water goes into the canal, we take so much out, and that's what all this is about." I says, "I never knew that. Honestly, never knew that." So that's what Willie was doing. So he says, "Well, I'll have to go, Ray." He says, "I've got a match on at the bowling club at the BA." And I remember him, he was just daft on balls. That was his life, but everybody's the rain thing, eh? But it just shows you what happened to the workings of the BA. Now, the BA is quite a wee bit over there, although they own quite a lot of land. Of course, these units weren't here. These are all pretty newish compared with them. So he must have walked quite a bit over to get to that pump house. Obviously, it's not there anymore. But, as I say, the canal, there was industry all along the canal, and it's somewhere or other industry used the canal. If it wasn't for likes of the gasworks here using the canal as well as the BA, it would be used for moving their goods that they were made. Because as I said at one time, there used to be barges going up and down here, as far as I'm led to believe, and at the side there were horses pulling them. Of course, you go into history for that. I'm quite sure you could look that up if you're interested in that sort of thing. But just to see it now, what a state it's all in, eh? All overgrown grass and trees and God knows what. But then again, they are working on it. I understand they've made a hell of a difference up at Camlin, Lock 16, new lock gates and all the rest of it. I would assume they're coming down here, but it costs money to do that. Anyway, there's something that, well, I never knew happened down here for a long while, especially the BA there with the pump station. Anyway, that's now a wee story. Bye the new.